Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. And golly gee willikers, do we have a special treat for you today. 2 episodes in one day. Things are getting crazy over here. We took about a 3 to 4 week break because Christmas, Christmas Eve, New Year's Day, everybody needed a little break from all the political news, but we are back in the saddle, raring and ready to go. And for those of you that maybe missed the first episode of the day, you're going to want to go back to our Facebook, Must Read Alaska's Facebook. I pinned to the top of the page the interview with Kim Strassel, who is on the editorial board for the Wall Street Journal and a New York Times bestselling author. She is epic, and you're going to want to spend 30 minutes of your day listening to the ins and outs of how her brain operates as it relates to conservative politics in the U.S. It's worth your 30 minutes to sit and listen to her. But without further ado, we have a very special guest today, Shawn Williams, who's the Vice President of Government Affairs and Strategy for Pacific Dataport. He was also an Assistant Commissioner of Commerce under Dunleavy for when he first got there in office. And he knows all about some of the latest and greatest internet things that are coming our way here in Alaska. So without further ado, Shawn, welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, I'm excited. So tell me a little bit about how your role plays into internet here in Alaska. Internet's always been an issue here in Alaska, where I live on the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Just 4 years ago, we finally upgraded past DSL or past dial-up, and we got DSL. It was a big deal. That happened 4 years ago. I'm sure that probably happened everywhere else in the United States in 1997. And so we're a little late to the game here in Alaska, but tell us about your role and how it ties into high-speed internet here in Alaska.
Well, I after I left the Dunleavy administration, I started working at Pacific Dataport, and that was almost 3 years ago. So it's been about 3 years of basically studying intensely the economics of broadband in rural Alaska. And it is extremely complicated, and there must be a million factors, right? So you have the fact that we have 665,000 square miles, and we have 14 mountain ranges and 3 million lakes and 3,000 rivers. I mean, to get broadband to everyone, you could run fiber or microwave everywhere, and to a certain extent, the Terra network does that in Southwest. It attempts to anyway. From mountaintop to mountaintop, they're running these microwaves, and you kind of end up with a mediocre service at best. I mean, most people are running less than 5x1, 5 being download and 1 being upload. And it's not exactly the most affordable. So the company that I work for is called Pacific Dataport. It was started in 2017. And the reason it was started is because its sister company, Microcom, and people might recognize Microcom. Microcom's been serving satellite TV and broadband throughout Alaska for about 38 years. Of course, broadband doesn't go back that far, but TV does. They have branches in Hawaii as well as branches in Idaho. But when it comes to Alaska, they were buying capacity from other satellite owners, and eventually they ran out of satellite capacity to buy and sell to their customers throughout Alaska. And it was kind of second rate, right? It was low on the horizon. It was somewhat slow. It was pretty expensive. It was old C-band technology. And Chuck Schumann and Sandra Blinstruvis said, their husband and wife team that own Microcom, they said, you know what, we're just going to solve this problem ourselves. We're going to start a company called Pacific Dataport. It'll be a middle mile company that specializes in satellite middle mile. We're going to buy our own satellite. And because there had kind of, as technology developed, innovation and all that stuff, it became more affordable to actually buy this. And we started working with a company out of San Francisco and ultimately signed on to buy one of their satellites. And that satellite is built in a box. It's a geosynchronous, actually it's called a micro geo HTS, which is high throughput satellite. It's the next generation. It's not the old C-band technology that some of us are familiar with. But that satellite, called the Aurora 4A or Arcturus, is sitting in a box and will soon be on its way to Cape Canaveral. And at this moment, it's scheduled for March 24th to be sent up on a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket as additional payload with the Viasat 3 satellite, which is a huge, huge satellite. Ours is like the size of a commercial dishwasher. And it'll go up in about 4 to 6 weeks. It'll go commercial, and it will be the first Alaska-centric satellite middle mile service that will literally cover every inch of Alaska. And it'll be at about 20 degrees off the horizon rather than what we know, is normally like 8 degrees off the horizon. It's just, if you have a tree or a building or a mountain, it's just, you're not going to get it. But in this situation, it's considerably higher on the horizon, which allows a lot more people to get it. And so that's our goal, awesome, is to get everyone broadband.
Yeah, I think of people in Alaska are used to putting up, 10 years ago, I had satellite internet, and it seems like I put my satellite at the top of a 100-foot pole pointed downwards. Mm-hmm. And so exactly. Tell me why, all this sounds awesome. You're launching a satellite. Why should the everyday Alaskan be excited about this kind of next generational satellite? You say, and it's the size of a dishwasher instead of a Suburban. What's exciting about this for somebody that lives in the woods that's used to getting crappy, slow dial-up speed internet?
Well, I'm in the process of building a cabin in Talkeetna on 5 acres, completely remote, right off the grid. And even I'll be able to have internet at that location. So probably the most exciting thing about it is, one, it's going to be affordable. And two, it's going to be much faster than what people are used to getting. Even if they actually get service to their house already in a village somewhere, right? So the Alaska Broadband Task Force, which Governor Dunleavy put together about a year ago, in their report, they have declared that 242 communities throughout Alaska are still unserved or underserved, which means that they do not have a wired broadband connection that offers 25 down and 3 up or better. So that's 242 communities. In the last 6 months or so, maybe the last year, the feds have promised to connect about 75 of those communities. So if you do the quick math, you can figure out that we have about 150 communities that at this moment still have no funding coming. There is no plan to get those people connected. And the way we look at it at Pacific Dataport, it is our job to help get those people connected. I probably would share that we do have a second system that we don't own, but we have access to, and that is the OneWeb LEO network. And that is a worldwide network of low Earth orbit satellites. They're very similar to the Starlink constellation, but they have a different business model. Starlink has a business model where they sell directly to the customer. It's called DTC, direct to consumer. And they're happy, Elon Musk is happy cutting out the middleman, cutting out the telecom, just send us a credit card payment and we'll drop it in the mail for you. And then here's an app that helps you get connected. So that's pretty cool. But there's going to be a lot of people who would still just like to go through their provider. And what OneWeb does is it sells capacity to the telecoms, tribes, tribal broadband consortium, schools, health clinics, and we help them do that. We're the conduit here in Alaska to help them sell their capacity to those organizations. So that's 100% online. As of June 1st, this past summer, it was 100% commercially available in Alaska. So we do have one online ready to go. Here in about 60 days, we'll have a second one online ready to go. It'll be the Aurora network with the GOHTS.
Nice. Tell me about this. Recently, I might just destroy the House bill number, but House Bill 363, I think, was passed and signed by the governor, creating a broadband office in the Department of Commerce. Talk to me about that bill. Do you think it's sufficient enough? Does it solve the problem? Is it a Band-Aid? Does it make the problem worse? What's your thoughts on it?
That's a great question, John. So this HB 363, which was passed at the very last minute, it was actually the House bill was sponsored by Bryce Edgman, and the Senate bill was sponsored by Mia Costello. And Representative Edgman got it through the House, and once it got to Senator Costello's desk, she realized, she talked to more people, right? She talked to our company, she talked to OneWeb, she talked to a lot of other people. And most of those people pointed out that there are some serious deficiencies in this HB 363. And we basically worked on a CS, and that was passed on to Labor and Commerce Committee, as well as Finance Committee. And I think everyone had short timers. They were ready to get out of Dodge, and they basically went right back to Bryce's bill because they didn't want to mess with it, I guess. And then it passed in the Senate and then back in the House. And long story short, the governor signed that bill just a couple of months ago. And so it's a done deal. But let me share with you the three things that it does. The first thing that it does is create the broadband office in the Department of Commerce. And in the Department of Commerce, they will have some advisory committees, both two types of advisory committees, and it's all kind of structured out. And these were all recommendations from the governor's task force, which was led by, basically, some people, some stakeholders, which included the telcos. So it created the broadband office, and that broadband office is really important because it will help determine where the BEAD funding is going to go. And the BEAD funding is coming from IJA. Collectively, it's about $42.5 billion. We expect that we'll probably get 500 million of that. Sadly, definitely, we could be using more of that money if the feds would send it our direction. But needless to say, that broadband office will help determine where that money goes. The second thing that it does is create priorities. And it's kind of interesting because the priorities were already outlined in IJA, so it was kind of a moot point. It was just in there again. The third thing that it did was create the Broadband Parity Fund. Now, it didn't put the money in there for the Broadband Parity Fund, but if the broadband office decided to use some of that money and drop it in there, and then the interest from that fund would go to the telecoms to help pay for high cost areas. Now, on the inside, you kind of think, well, wait a second, why would we create a broadband parity fund? And it's basically going to it's almost like the power cost equalization, except it's for broadband. And as a fiscal conservative, it pained me greatly to know that that we had a lot of Democrats and we had a lot of Republicans vote for this bill. So was it adequate? And the answer to that question is that there are two things that I believe we need to fix in HB 363. The first is that there's a line in HB 363 that says a firm with experience serving rural Alaska. So if an applicant, part of the scoring, point scoring and stuff like that, it will favor applicants who have experience serving rural Alaska already. And all that means is that it'll go to GCI, ACS, or one of the companies that have already been here for a long time. And And I think that's not necessarily a good thing when you're trying to get competition and get people bidding against each other. I'll tell you what's missing in a lot of these awards, federal awards, is competition. You'll have one company apply for the money and no one else touches it. It's literally just one company. So there is no competition. The second part that needs to be fixed is technology neutral. And those BEAD award decisions need to be made without technical requirements, and they must be technology neutral, because you can't favor one over the other, especially when we're talking about Alaska and getting, these 150 communities that are still locked out, getting them served. It'll take forever to run fiber to them, and we need to make sure that satellite is an option.
So I got a just a simple question for you. It sounds like Alaska could be potentially getting $500 million. Why does the government need $500 million when it sounds like there's already a couple solutions on the table? They could sign up for your thing. They could sign up for Elon Musk's thing, 100% coverage on both sides. Why in the God's green earth does the government need $500 million when somebody could sign up today in any village all over Alaska and get coverage today?
That is $1 million question. And, listen, I right now, getting people connected with broadband and giving them laptops and iPads and making sure that there's, they know how to use it. They're not going to get taken advantage of on the internet. Since COVID-19 happened, basically everyone in America decided that broadband is a necessity. And we absolutely agree with that. But the answer isn't to literally throw billions and billions and billions of dollars at a situation and hope that it solves the problem. In Alaska, our problems are very complicated, and there are plenty of firms out there willing to take that federal money and build fiber and then try to collect more subsidies on that. And I don't know if you realize it, but the FCC spends between the high cost USF Alaska plan and the E-rate plan and the rural healthcare program. They spend almost $400 million a year here in subsidies. Jeez. Right? That's user subsidies. That's not for building out. That's for user subsidies. And then you have the Reconnect, which usually spends about $50 million a year here. And that is for build out. I know ACS has their own high cost USF plan, and they use that $20 million a year for build out, which is great. So some of the money is used for build out, but it's less than 10%, right? So this BEAD funding that's coming is a good chunk of it is for building out new connectivity, getting more people connected with broadband. So one of our biggest challenges in all of Alaska is missing middle mile. Missing middle mile is the reason why service, broadband service in Alaska costs so much. It's scarce, and you have a company that comes in and says, hey, we'll, if we get a little bit of subsidy here, we'll be able to throw in a couple of bucks of our own money. We'll build the fiber, and then they end up paying a lot to get service there. Now, one thing that's developed in the last 6 months, which is actually pretty cool, is that the telcos, and I'll give props to GCI because it's GCI. GCI has matched their pricing in the villages. As long as they're connected with fiber, they have matched the urban prices. What we call urban prices is basically Anchorage prices in packages. So that is a huge development. One of our biggest biggest broadband provider in the state, has reached here in the last 6 months, which I think is pretty impressive.
That's pretty awesome. So how long do you think it's going to take for something like this to make it to, those 70 that is on the Fed list and another 100 or so that still need to be on some sort of a list? Is this a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan? I think, you and I both know that oftentimes people have these big ideas in Alaska and they put literally hundreds of millions of dollars behind it and nothing ever happens. So in your mind, how when could somebody start seeing the fruit of this if they live somewhere you can only get to by plane?
So I think where I hear you going with this is how much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take?
Yeah.
And that is the second billion-dollar question in this business. And what I'll share with you is that we looked at what the feds are spending to connect connect someone in rural Alaska with broadband, and it's tens of thousands of dollars. So if we take that and we look at how many households are not connected yet, in-house, we come up with an estimate of somewhere between, I want to say it was close to $4 billion to get everyone in the state connected with fiber. Okay. Now that's just to build it, right? That's not operations, maintenance, any subsidies that might be coming to help the customer pay for it. That's literally just to build it. Now, I worked with a group of grad students using an AI algorithm that they created, and they basically mapped out Alaska, and they mapped out what we have for middle mile and fiber middle mile, and what we would still need, taking into consideration that mountain ranges were impassable and rivers were actually a positive, right? Because we're hoping that you can run fiber up a river. And they came up with an estimate of $3 billion. So I think I'm pretty comfortable saying that it would cost $3 to $4 billion to run fiber to all of the communities throughout Alaska. Now, there's a small problem with that. One, we're not getting $3 to $4 billion in federal money. The second problem is that it would take decades to order the fiber, get past all the engineering, the EIS, and all of that stuff. It would take decades. So our solution, we believe, is the most affordable and the quickest. We launched a system in Akiak, and it took, I want to say it was 3 to 4 months to design it and to build it and to get the first person hooked up with broadband in that community. So, I mean, and it was a fraction of the cost, right? When you look at the CapEx involved.
So is this, somebody's going to listen to this and they're going to say, this sounds like what Elon Musk is doing. Elon Musk is what, to the everyday person that's just listening to this episode is what you're doing similar to what Elon Musk is doing? Is it competing against each other? Is it working hand in hand? What's the difference if there is one?
Well, our estimation is that there are about 150,000 rural Alaskans that are still unserved or underserved. Okay. You break that down, it's about 35,000 households. Now, what I can share with you is that LEO technology is the way a satellite floating over Alaska works is that there are horizontal beams or cells, and basically each cell can only the OneWeb is with beams and Starlink is with cells, and they're kind of this honeycomb looking cell. Now you can only put so many users. It's almost like coaxial cable, right? Things start to slow down in the evening. Why? Well, because everyone in the neighborhood's on it. Well, that's exactly what happens with LEO too, if you're not careful. So as the satellite floats over, if you're in the same cell that Bethel is in, well, it ain't gonna be so pretty after a while, right? So the LEO technology does have a weakness, and we call it satellite capacity limitation. So it's definitely something that's not talked about a lot, but almost everyone knows that the Starlink constellation has the speeds nationwide have actually gone down on average, and I believe it's around 50 by 10 now. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that the most recent nationwide average for Starlink was like 50 by 10. But I would research that to confirm. But that's not what it was a year ago. A year ago, it was a lot faster. But the more people that get on the system, it kind of slows it down. And it was point capacity limitation. That's what it's called.
So if you could flick a switch and, get everything that your heart's desires in terms of, the best opportunity for Alaska to get high-speed internet, what does that look like if you could flick that switch?
If I could flip a switch, it would be that the new broadband office in the state of Alaska's Department of Commerce used every available resource to get people connected. Don't have this kind of preset, pre-made, preset mind that, basically this mindset that you can only use fiber to get people connected. Because if they have that mindset, it's going to be a long time before everyone gets connected. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. The last thing you want to do is put your blinders on and start running down the hall. So that would be the switch to take those blinders off and make sure that all of their decisions are technology neutral and truly in the best interest of all Alaskans.
Well, I think this is fascinating. For folks that are listening, I was actually, I signed up for the Elon Musk Starlink internet the first second I could sign up for it a while back, and paid my $100 deposit and got it shipped out to me. And unfortunately, the hardware malfunctioned about 2 days in, but they shipped me a new one, and I haven't been able to trudge through the 6 feet of snow at my house to put up the new one. But for the moments that it did work before the hardware went out, I was hovering around 130 megabytes on the high number, and then 40 or so megabytes on the lower number. And man, that's like lightning speed to where compared to where I'm at, because here on the Kenai Peninsula we have DSL, and really all that means is that it's about twice the speed of dial-up, which I can stream Netflix if I'm lucky, kind of deal. So what you're talking about, Shawn, and what Elon Musk is talking about, I think is very exciting. I think it's the future of internet in Alaska. I don't think it's feasible to lay fiber, over 600,000 square miles in Alaska. I think the easiest, most financially wise move to do is to link up to satellites, is what is exactly what you're doing. So I think that's very, very exciting. It's cutting edge. I mean, you're literally doing the same stuff that some of the same stuff that Elon Musk is doing, which I think is very exciting. Do you have any last minute thoughts before we head off here? We've covered a lot, from the House Bill 363 to if you could flick a switch and do everything succinctly with the lowest cost, with the most effectiveness. You've kind of laid that out, but is there anything we've missed on the in between?
First I want to say thank you, John, for having me on, because we've known about this for a couple of weeks now, that we were going to do this interview, and I really was excited to be on the show. So first, let me say thank you for the opportunity to share our story. I'd probably just close by saying that the number one concern for our company is that no one is left behind. And if the listeners, the people who listen to this podcast, would share that same mindset that we need to get broadband to everyone as soon as possible, and make sure that it's affordable broadband, and that we truly leave no one behind. I think that would probably be my last request as we wrap up the show here.
And can somebody buy this from the companies that you're involved in right now, like this high-speed satellite internet? Is it currently available to where somebody's listening, they're like, I want to buy that? Is that available, or is it coming soon?
So Microcom is a direct-to-consumer provider that has locations in Alaska. They have several locations in Alaska, Fairbanks and Anchorage and the Valley. But if you would like to go to Microcom, you can get the Aurora service coming up here in the next month or so, a couple months. And interestingly enough, they could actually help you with your Starlink connectivity as well. And then for those who are interested, they can also help you with the OneWeb LEO connectivity. That's mostly focused on businesses and kind of commercial accounts. And Microcom would definitely be the place where people can go to get hooked up with the new technology that's coming, that's here for satellite broadband connectivity.
I will make sure to put their link in our description. Will they set up the Starlink satellite internet for somebody who buys it?
They'll set up all hardware regardless of where it comes from.
Gosh, I need to call them because God forbid I try to set it up again and I break another, $800 piece of equipment. I'm about, done doing that. So I might give Microcom a call.
Just so you know, they sell the Starlink equipment too.
Nice. Well, folks, go check it out, Microcom. I'll put the link in the description. But Shawn, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Must Read Alaska show. And I truly believe that this is the cutting edge technology that's coming to Alaska. Folks, this is not like the satellite internet that you're used to 10 years ago at dial-up speeds. This is high-speed satellite internet that is going to be a game changer for folks in Alaska and rural Alaska, businesses in rural Alaska, schools in rural Alaska, hospitals in rural Alaska. No longer will you have to survive off of dial-up internet. You have the potential of having high-speed internet 24/7, which is very, very exciting. So Shawn, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome back anytime, and we wish you nothing but success.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your time.